Call the Hamilton County Rules Review Committee to order. Do we have any visitors wishing to address the committee? You will have 5 minutes, and before you do, let me explain something. I put on here that, on the agenda for 3 minutes, and it's been brought to my attention that we always do 5 minutes, so you will be allowed to speak up to 5 minutes.
My name is Tony Schmazzullo. I live at 609 East Louise Avenue. The first thing that I would like to speak about this evening, I brought it up at the city meeting 2 nights ago, is that it's hard to understand where the voices are coming from with the masks on. The people that are here all the time, the people that you all generally deal with, they know you all's voices. But the people don't know you all's voices, and if we can't see your voice, we don't know where it's coming from. So if we have any questions in the future, we don't know who might ask the question or where to ask our questions to that appropriate person. So if there's any way that in these meetings, either a hand can be raised prior to somebody speaking so that we know where the voice is coming from, possibly remove the mask while you are speaking so it's a little bit more clear, and we know who's speaking. That would really help out the people that don't know what's going on, don't know the people's voices, don't know who you all are, because most of the people don't. They have no clue who the committee is. So we won't know where to get answers from in the future. That's all I'd like to say at this time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to address the committee?
My name is Linda Noe. Is this working now, or? Our problem is not public speaking, or the public's right to speak, or how much they're allowed to speak. You've always had 5 minutes for committee meetings, and yet somehow, and I will take it that Mr. Gore made an error, that he put 3 minutes. And he said it was because, well, nobody ever talks over that much. That's fine. Then leave it at 5. If they talk 3, fine. If they talk 4, fine. If they talk 5, fine. But I think you're probably headed toward trying to cut down on committee speaking. You're obviously trying to cut down on public speaking completely. And I don't mean cut it out, but restrict it. You need to leave the public speaking rules alone. This rules committee should not be used to try and restrict public comments. Use it to pass citizen-friendly rules that not only allow but encourage public participation and provide responses to those comments at the meeting or within 10 days after the meeting. So many people say something or ask something and it's just like whoosh. There's absolutely zero response. And when you look at this rules committee, some of you may or may not know that this started out with Chairman Shipley's lawsuit that was unauthorized, with Mr. Capp's false statement to the court, and with Mr. Capp's refund of money that he said he had never even charged. And 3 weeks later, roughly, Chairman Shipley again violates the rules, only this time it's the Constitution. And he tells people you can't wear certain apparel to commission meetings. That is largely how we got here. Suddenly we realized we don't know Robert's rules. Mr. Shipley says something passed when it didn't because it didn't have a 2/3 majority. So what you really need is to learn and find out what's going on. Take Mr. Curtis up on his offer to teach a class on Robert's rules. If you're going to adopt the rules, know what they are. Listen to the citizens, ask questions, do research, know what's going on. There's not one of you that doesn't know that knowledge is power, and this county commission has little knowledge about what is going on in county government. You only know what you are told, and often that information is only provided to you at the last minute. Some commissioners get information and some don't. Howard Shipley is chairman, he gets lots of emails from Bill Britton and sends emails to Bill Britton. Bill gets a lot of emails from County Attorney Chris Capps. The rest of you just wait to be told what's going on or to read it in the paper. An example is when the paper reported the jail estimate and said that Bill Britton had been working and the committee had been working on jail design savings. But this commission had never been told that. You read it in the paper. So when you go tonight, I'd like you to consider, forget the review the guidelines on public comments, leave them like they are. Nobody has objected, maybe commissioners are objecting to people speaking, but that certainly does not come from the people. Secondly, I'm going to pass out some information for you. It is the Morristown, Tennessee Code of Ordinances. Now this goes a step slightly beyond what you're talking about, which is to determine what the rules of this commission are. But this is what you need, so you don't have to, when there's a question, is there a 10-day rule, what's the 10-day rule? You have to run down to the minutes or to the county clerk and get that. When Mr. Britton and Mr. Ramsey were making false statements about the Joint Economic Board and false statements about me, that's where I went. Well, I'd already gone there, I knew the answers. But that's what you have to do now. But if you were in the city of Morristown, you pull up the code, and it tells you under city council, you would have rules. Under mayor, instead of city attorney, you'd have county attorney. This is what you need to solve your big problem, which is not just the rules of this commission, but the rules of this entire, not rules of meetings, but rules of the entire commission.
Thank you, Ms. Noe. Are there any other people that would like to address the committee?
I think I only have about 10 of those, but I'll get 4.
Okay, under the new business, in the discussion of what we're going to try to accomplish here, each of you have received a packet, and it says a lot of information about sample rules, citizen communication guidelines, items to consider for local rules, the adoption of Robert's Rules in Order, which we have adopted, and then we're going to try to customize our local rules so that they're meaningful to our meetings and appropriate for the type of structure that we would like to organize. And then the second thing that we would like to accomplish is I want to have the next meeting to invite the public in on February the 25th at 6 p.m. And this will be designed to allow everyone to express their concerns and wishes and have those things taken under consideration before we meet back as a committee. And then we will hopefully put those ideas together, considering both parties, and getting everything taken care of so that we can have an orderly conducted committee meeting. Now, in the packets, you have the review of the guidelines for public comments. And Charlie Curtis has provided us with some sample rules. I want each of you, if you would, to go through and study those and determine what you feel would make a comprehensive set of rules for our community. And there's some good content under several of these. Some of them are not as applicable as others, but we just need to choose the ones that we want to function under and get that into a list of sample rules that will become our local rules. Charlie Curtis defined the local rules as being something that was there to facilitate when there is a difference from Robert's rules to that local rule. So if we have something that we want to do a recess and take some time to consider, then we would be able to do that with the right language in place. With Robert's rules, that would limit you possibly to the same meeting. And sometimes that's not enough time to think and discuss those situations. So, and then item C is the local rules of procedure. So we want to come up with how we're going to carry that out and have everyone know those things. I think it probably is a good idea if we would add to that, creating the class with Charlie Curtis, getting him to come in and speak to the issues of our local rules and Robert's rules, go through it and define how we're going to use it moving forward. Mayor Britton, would you have any opposition to trying to set up that meeting with Charlie Curtis, or maybe after the public meeting on February the 25th, the following month, to a meeting with that? All right, so
Randy, I feel certain he's involved heavily with legislative committees and actions going on right now. He probably won't be available until after session.
and session ends
Probably May.
May.
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Yeah,
He
May.
would not be available until afterwards.
So what is it the wish of the body to do then? Should we wait until after we have that to make our final rules?
I would recommend that we're not in a hurry. You know, we can dive in, do some research and do some work, and do some elbow work, and maybe, well, there's a couple of things. Charlie being one of them, coming in and discussing with us, he's the authority of all authorities in my book. I mean, there's others, there's a state legislative person, I can't remember his name, from Maryville, I believe, that's, teaches Robert's Rules of Order as well. You know, we can find out who that is and have him come in. But also, Charlie, they also work with the authorities we have in Nashville to make certain the rules that we want to look at are proper. You know, to have some legal standing. You know, if we do, I don't want to go down a road that causes issues. I want it to be important.
Get it right.
And I feel like that's the purpose of doing this whole process, so that we can refine it and make it better and communicate in proper channels to everyone, and then communicate back to us in proper channels.
My opinion, we're
Could we
going
not call Charlie and find out if shake loose?
Yes, and if it's okay for me to do so, I'll call Charlie and see when he could do that. And then we can schedule accordingly. I think that if we're not in a hurry to finish this committee out, then we could just take our time to do it right, and I think that would be a better investment of time.
When he comes, we might, if we're still under COVID restrictions, we may need to look at a different location for the meeting, because we have a lot of people, in addition to commissioners, who are also interested in that training.
Randy, along that line, we might want to look at some of the rules that just come up. I'll give you an example before I go about Cherokee Park. A few years ago, they wanted to turn that into a bar out there and sell beer in Cherokee Park. So I worked on it for nearly 2 weeks. Found out you can't do it. The way I found out about it, the deed says cannot sell alcoholic beverages in the park. That's one thing that can be on down the line. I mean, that's just an example of how it can go wrong. Spend all that time trying to get to sell beer out there, then come down to the final word, looking at the deed, the property, it says you cannot sell it. So
I think that
the
goes back to,
issue died.
don't you think that goes back to this, that Linda gave us? Where you have something that you can go back and look at, and I think this is a great idea. I mean, just from being on commission and just being a lay person, I mean, just the public, this is great. So I think that would have settled that issue before you even had to do all that. Just go and look, see what the history looks like, and we're done.
And it's likely that no matter what we do, we'll never dig deep enough to find everything that could possibly come up with in question.
That's gonna be a job.
We're going to need to take that and have some leeway to go back and look when we have that. So we need to have a protocol that'll allow that to happen too.
I think that would help the commission immensely. Y'all, I'm speaking, I have cancer, I'm not taking off my mask. So, I just think that would help the commission immensely. And the citizens, I mean, you know, it helps us, we look up stuff without having to bother somebody really and see what we think we need to do. So, that's my 2 cents.
Good, good, good.
Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add to this at this point?
One of the concerns that I have with the rules as they are now, the way I interpret them, except for the camera issue, the rules only apply for commission meetings, not committee meetings. And so we need to make that determination whether we want them to apply to both meetings. Because it's pretty clear, the rules say commission meeting, except for the camera, and the camera issue does say commission and committee meetings.
And that's exactly the reason why that I had made a mistake on the setup of the 3 minutes. I thought that that was inappropriate. And I don't recall that there were any rules on that. However, we've done it that way before, so I thought it was fair to honor and let. But those types of things are going to come up is my point. And so, yes, if we could determine what's going to happen both on the committee and on the commission meeting.
I think something, I'm sorry. I think something else too. I think since this is all kind of new, we're feeling our way through some of this, like adding this and figuring out putting the committees on here instead of that. I don't think any of us need to be mean to anybody about anything. We just need to discuss it because the input that you get from outside is huge too. Stuff we don't even think about. I never even thought about this piece of paper right here. I mean, it's brought in from the outside. All the experience you have is only what you can bring to the table. And I do think we need to listen, but I think there needs to be respect on both sides of it. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think that that's a good statement of what we're trying to accomplish, and I appreciate those words because I believe that's exactly what we need to do. Our goals here are to make it where we have a respectful display on giving communication out to the community, and we want to be respected in the way that we handle things as well. So hopefully we'll get to that goal, and things will run even smoother. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I noticed in the packet that there are snippets from other counties, just, small snippets of what they may have in the rules. I'm wondering if CTAS could identify a county that has a good set of rules that's, bound or put together that we could use as a model.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too, and as long as that is what the body prefers to do, I can reach out to CTES and find out that very thing. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
We may have part of that already in the packet. I'm not sure Charlie's sources, but I suspect that some of it came from CTAS.
And that might be a good, after we make our set of rules, then maybe we should present them to Charlie and see if he feels like it's comprehensive enough and can meet most of the challenges that we face in having these discussions.
That was kind of my point, that maybe we can do some groundwork and then have Charlie come in and maybe teach a class where we present to him and then take it back to CTS for some approval. Cause I want it to be right,
Yeah.
to be fair.
And I feel like everybody here does. And I think that that's the good news. We want to do what's right, and I think everybody out there wants us to do what's right too. And that's reasonable and should be expected. So this is a good place to maybe get some common ground. Anyone else? That's a great suggestion, thank you. If not,
Oh, I have a question.
I'm sure.
So how do you want us to give our input back? I mean, how do you want that? Because of course me, I've already read this and made my notes, so, I mean, when do you want that?
Well, that's what I was thinking. We'll have the meeting from the public first, and let them give us
Okay.
what they would like to have, so that when we're making those considerations, we can put them all together. I would like for everyone to go on their own and review these and pick out the areas that they felt were most helpful to our local needs. And then we could come back together for a meeting, if that sounds like the right way to do it, Mayor. And then maybe have a working discussion and sit around the table and hammer them out until we get finished with that. And that should be after the meeting with the public, because we need to understand what their interests are as well. And then that third meeting would include, hopefully, Charlie Curtis. And then the fourth meeting, we could finalize everything and then have him to review them.
Let me ask a question about previous decisions, or decisions that's been made by previous commission. I think we've got 3 or 4 things listed in the packet. And I'm sure that's not all of the decisions that have been made. And it would help us tremendously, as Nancy and Ms. Noe both have suggested, to know, what decisions have been made, because if I understand it, that sort of supersedes Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, it's part of the decisions that they have made that we all need to consider, and I don't know what they are.
Well, you do realize that no previous commission can bind the hands of the next commission.
No, I did not realize that. Because, you've got, here, we have the 10-day rules, we have,
Which I think is a very safe
Robert's
rule
Rules of
myself. I mean,
Order.
I think the 10-day rule is a
Are
very
you-
safe rule. For me, I want to know what I'm fixing to discuss with the 10-day rule.
but you're not suggesting that we have to adopt all those rules every year.
No, but I'm suggesting that when those rules are adopted and they're in place, you can change those rules, because what we did like years ago cannot bind your hands today. So you have that ability to change those rules.
And we've done that.
And I would just warn you, like on some of these rules, I mean, I was there for some of those rules, I wanna know what you're gonna ask me, what I'm fixing to discuss. So, some of them probably, they might not even be relevant anymore, but some of them may be extremely relevant.
How do we, who's gonna do the legwork to get this done?
Mayor Britton, does it exist in a form with the county clerk's office?
Just in the minutes.
Do we have any suggestions as to how we could pull that information together?
So you're saying we have to go through all the minutes?
Be thorough.
How far back?
For that 20, 30 years.
Well, Nancy, let me take what you're saying in another direction. If the current commission adopts a set of rules, then it will supersede anything in the past that might be contradictory specifically?
To that, yes, because you cannot bind the hands of the next, the next body. So, yeah, I think that you would be, I think that there's probably, but I still do think that you need to go back. I mean, that's very time consuming, I don't know if you have time to do that. But I think when you have rules and regulations, I mean, some of them may be specific to one something that would be relevant still and may not be relevant ever again. But yes, when you start changing the rules and you make the new rules, those are then the rules. Did that even make sense at all?
The thing that I struggle with on that is you'll never be able to figure out every rule that needs to be considered to make it comprehensive. And so there are gonna be things that come up as time goes on that you're going to find, and we're gonna have to have some means, some procedure to work through those when they come up.
But then what you need to do is put in your rules for situations like that you have a procedure in place. Everybody understands it, knows it, and then you just keep moving down the road.
As before, with new rules, if we develop this packet of relevant rules, as we move forward, we'll have that for the next commission that comes on. And we'll find that one that's not been addressed, that we'll go back and research, and we'll add it to our list, maybe that's how we approach it. We keep this in updated each commission, or each year. Because we have the opportunity to adopt local rules in September of every new year.
And one of the recommendations was to do it at the start of every new commission.
Okay.
And I think that that's probably a simplified approach that could work for everyone. Would you guys agree?
Yes, sir.
So Randy, if you had a rule that was in there 10 years, 8 years ago, for instance, like this 10-day rule, if you want to change that rule, you've got to vote to change that rule. That rule's got to be changed.
That's how you would vote to change any of them, or create new ones. They'll have to be voted. Yeah.
You're right, we've got to find out what rules we got first. That's number one. So they work in today's, well, today's work, I'm not working. Well, I think there might be some little technicality in there, they know that's good, it was good then, but back then we didn't have that on pencil and paper. And not do it until everything's gotta be on pencil and paper. But today it all can be on the computer. All
And that's
can
an
be on video.
excellent, that's an excellent point actually, because I'm sure there's some stuff in there that talks about it can't be, yeah. I think that's a good point.
Mr. Berkey, are there any, is there anyone out there that would have this type of experience that could help us to refine it quickly? Because I could see this taking an enormous amount of time.
You mean in researching our amendments? Well, she's got a search engine now, doesn't she, Bill? The county clerk? I mean, there might be some flexibility there, but I don't know how much CTAS would do for us, but CTAS is, is a great resource. And they're a great resource too, to make sure that you don't get out of the guardrails,
Right.
before you even get started. So, is Rick Hall still our consultant? And they have a staff in Nashville and other areas too that help with things like this. So I don't know how much Rick would help with, but it just seems to me that looking at the snippets that are in here from Williamson County, Anderson County, Montgomery County, that there is probably 3 or 4 counties that CTAS will know has a good set of local rules. And I would hope that, it's a lot easier to take a model like that and have it before you, and then adapt it for what you're looking for here, instead of trying to start from scratch. And I would, just another thought, as Nancy was talking, I think she'll agree with me on this, I would hope that whatever we do for the legislative body, that it's simple. That we not make technical rules and things that are subject to interpretation. I mean, the more simple, the better. And it also seems that legislative bodies, they get information from a lot of different sources. You all know this better than me, but they get it from social media, they get it at the grocery store, they get it at the ballot box, they get it at meetings. So that's a very crucial part of what commissioners use to make decisions. So I don't, at least with me, to Ms. Noy's point earlier, it's a valid point, but no one has said to me that they're interested in this being more restrictive on public comment. No one has said that to me. So I would think that if we could get a model and maybe use the search engine that the county clerk has to just look for rules or regulations, see what comes up, that it would be a good start. But I think CTAS will be an invaluable resource, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else with any comments?
Yeah, Randy, I was looking at this one, and I'm just curious, how much do, we pay out for mileage now? How much a mile?
Well, it's not 38 cents.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
it.
That's a good example of it. That's been 38 cents, it's up, I don't know, 50 cents,
We pay the state rate, it's in the low 50s.
low 50, so that'd be one that would follow that line.
Can I approach, or you want me to stay here?
Yeah, to approach, please.
I want to thank you all for giving the public an opportunity to speak on the date that you said. But I feel that some rules need to be actually put down on paper for people to come in here and address what your goals are and what the rules are going to be, versus just coming in here and just speaking randomly and not knowing what the rules are going to be in the future, because you guys haven't decided on that yet. So I thank you for that opportunity, but I feel that by them not having anything to talk about or anything to read and do work on, is just like all of you not getting your information, being expected to vote on it prior to knowing and doing any kind of research. So I feel a little bit that if you postpone that until you all come down with some type of guidelines, so people know what they're going to come up here to speak about, whether or not they agree with it or disagree with it. Right now, there's just nothing. So there's nothing that the public can even come over here and be concerned about, because we don't know what to speak about, what to talk about, or what's going to be on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was part of my thought process in having the community come in and speak too, because I want to make sure that we're considering those pieces as we go through this process. So it might be applicable then to have the public come in on the 25th and share their viewpoints, and then we get back together, and then we can have a second one where we can present based on that.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that.
Any other comments? I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we can get started on this process. It will be a process, and I hope that everyone will take the time now to go back and dig into the samples that we have. There's some good language, as Mr. Berkey said. Williamson has some very nice pieces in what was in their language that seem to be somewhat applicable to us. So we do have some things that we can get started with, and we'll reach out to CTAS, and we will reach out to Mr. Curtis, and we'll hopefully have an agenda set by the time we meet in February. We're adjourned.